The Baltimore Ravens pull off an unreal comeback over the Cincinnati Bengals.
It's hard to think of anything more frustrating than watching Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase do what they did and lose.
San Francisco 49ers coming off a bye, well-rested, getting players back, reinforcements.
The Florida Gators, and more appropriately, Scott Strickland, Florida Gators athletic director, have announced that Billy Napier will return as the Florida Gators head coach.
The latest on Tyrese Maxey.
The Locked On Podcast Network presents The Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
The Baltimore Ravens pull off an unreal comeback over the Cincinnati Bengals.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast.
That was like Stress City. That was Stress City. And luckily we're talking about a win. Luckily we're talking about a great comeback, but like I'm sitting there and I'm loving it. Then I'm not. Then I'm loving it again. Then I'm not. And we're just feeling every single emotion. And it was, I am drained. I am absolutely drained, but you know what? We're gonna be hype here on Locked On Ravens, and then we're also gonna be not hype about some of the things as well because, man, rough game for some aspects of this team and a great game for other aspects. Again, 35-34 the final score. I knew when the Bengals were walking down the Ravens, there was no doubt in my mind that the Bengals were going for two. They were never going to give the ball back to Lamar Jackson. Right? They were never going to give the ball back to Lamar. Not after he ended up getting on a roll. The Bengals defense played, I'll give them credit. First half, they played well. But I want to give the MVP of this game, Lamar Jackson, obviously, he did great. The MVP of this game was Marlon Humphrey. He was the one that won this game for the Baltimore Ravens. And we'll talk about the defense as a whole. And I'm going to be the first to say that I don't think the Ravens can win a Super Bowl if the defense plays this way. It's not a hot take or anything. I think everybody would agree with me. But the defense has real issues. And no, you're not going to play Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase again. I think the Ravens all but dashed their playoff hopes. But Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are not the only good wide receiver quarterback duo that you're going to have to face. And those other teams have other good stars and an offensive line that's not Cincinnati's and a better run game, if we're being honest. But, I mean, they got the job done to me. But I think that Marlon Humphrey play, Bengals are up 21-7 with the ball, and Chase Brown gets that ball ripped out from Marlon. Ravens get the ball back and pretty much immediately score. That's when the game turned. You could see Chase Brown was running pretty scared for the majority of the game, and that was the play that turned it. But, I mean, we have to start with Lamar Jackson just from a general perspective here. This man is the MVP. I don't want anybody else to debate it, right? I don't want to do that, right? We're not talking about anybody else for MVP. It's Lamar Jackson. I'm just pulling up the official. I have the unupdated box score stats. I'm quickly going to get the actual updated box score stats. Somehow this game was better than the other one. Like somehow this game, we were like, okay, is another Cincinnati Ravens game this season really going to live up to the one that we watched in week 5? And all of a sudden, this one is just better. This one is just better. And Maximilian, I agree with you. I don't know if it'd be 0-10, but it'd be pretty close. It'd be pretty close. Lamar is a superhero, puts on that cape so many times. And this team without Lamar Jackson is not a good team, right? I think we can all say that. So Lamar Jackson on the day, 25-33, 290 yards with 4 touchdowns, almost had an interception, but it did not count. The ball hit the ground. Lamar struggled in the first half. The whole offense struggled in the first half. I thought the play calling wasn't good from Tom Lunkin in the first half. I thought the Bengals defense was able to take the Ravens out of a rhythm. They were stopping Derrick Henry. There were penalties on the Ravens. Speaking of the officiating in this game was just awful. Absolutely atrocious. Both sides, if we're being honest. The Ravens had terrible calls against them. The Bengals had terrible calls against them. There were no calls that both teams should have gotten. Get those officials out, man. I never want to see that officiating crew again. Just a terrible, horrible display of officiating from that officiating crew all the way across the board. I mean, the Ravens got a couple of penalties on them that weren't. There were ticky-tack calls, and then You got the Bengals, who the refs miss a couple of calls against the Ravens on them, and the Ravens, they have a couple calls that are missed against them. It was terrible. But regardless, Lamar Jackson ended up putting the team on his back, and you can tell, like, once Lamar gets in a rhythm, it's almost impossible to stop him. And I thought that both teams, again, this was like the first game, both teams horribly coached, multiple moments, awful. John Harbaugh in the first drive of the game challenges a 2-yard completion. I think it was Mike Gesicki. So much happened since that challenge. I think it was Gesicki. And it clearly was a catch. He lost the ball going out of bounds, but he was already down. And John Harbaugh challenges that play. Then they have to waste another timeout because they have 12 men on the field. And hey, guess what? Would have been nice to have timeouts at the end of the half, right? Would have been nice to have timeouts. So that ends up costing the Ravens. Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow. I mean, look, Joe Burrow played phenomenal, right? I have, nothing bad to say about him and his performance. But that sequence, the Ravens were up, or they were down by 7 at that time? 3rd and 4, the Bengals go 2 deep shots on 3rd and 4th down. Don't even kick the field goal. Or maybe Ravens were down by 1. That was when Tucker missed the extra point, I think. Ravens were down by 1. And to me, you go over the middle of the field. The Ravens defense got cooked the whole game over the middle of the field, right? All over the middle of the field. And the Bengals decided to go for deep shots. I mean, look, this is going to be maybe a little harsh. Zach Taylor's the worst coach in the NFL. Worst coach in the NFL. It deserved to be fired, honestly, maybe even 2 years ago. And the big thing there was the Bengals couldn't get out of their own way. Neither could the Ravens in some aspects, right? I mean, 11 penalties. And I see DRB, appreciate you putting this in the chat. 11 penalties compared to the Bengals 3. So it tells you a little bit about the officiating on the night. But Zach Taylor, to me, there are a lot of bad coaches. Zach Taylor, by far and away, the worst coach in the league. And there's no way he returns to Cincinnati next season. You can bookmark that. You can clip it up. Zach Taylor's awful. Now, that benefits the Ravens, and I'll take it. I'm like, hey, Ravens can capitalize on that Zach Taylor incompetency. Hey, man, I'll take that 10 times out of 10. Joe Burrow, by the way, had to throw the ball 56 times in this game. 56 times. The Bengals have no run game whatsoever. Chase Brown only 3.2 yards per carry in this one. Khalil Herbert had a fumble on his only rush of the game. I don't even think they counted it as a rush because he fumbled the ball. So I think for the Ravens, I'm trying to catch myself if we're being honest here. And I see Bean Man here does not feel like a win. I feel like it was a win in some aspects, but it wasn't in other aspects. I totally feel what you're saying here. I totally understand this because defensively, it felt like they lost this game 10 times over. The defense is terrible. And look, we're 10 weeks into the season now. The trade deadline's done. Nobody else is walking through that door, right? It is what it is, unless you do get rid of Zach Orr, which personally I don't anticipate happening. I know there are a lot of calls for that. But as much as I want to talk about the offense in this first part of the show, I mean, Joe Burrow's incredible. Jamar Chase is incredible, right? Those are 2 perennial players at their positions, and we need to respect them as such, right? I get that. They have no one else on that offense. T. Higgins, out. Orlando Brown Jr., out. Zach Moss, out. And the Ravens gave up 34 points to that Bengals team. Now, that speaks to how good Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are. Jamar had 264 receiving yards in this game. Your one job as a defense. We've talked about this both times on this show. The one job that this defense had was stop Jamar Chase. Let anybody else but Jamar Chase beat you. And Jamar Chase almost single-handedly took this team down with Joe Burrow. That is what it is. That's what it's been. Where the Ravens have a simple job and they cannot execute it. It's on Zach Orr. It's on the defenders. It's on everybody, right? I'm not putting all the blame on Zach Orr. I'm not putting all the blame on the players. It is a combination of both. Now, the Ravens missed Kyle Hamilton in this game. I'm not sure if we have an update yet from John Harbaugh. I'm sure we won't. I'm sure the Ravens will take this completely into next week, and we might not hear anything about Kyle Hamilton. Obviously looked really bad when it first happened. Right here we go. John Harbaugh said Kyle Hamilton sprained his ankle, and he did not consider it to be a serious injury. Wow. Awesome. That looked bad. Wow. That looked bad at the first. But look, if they don't have Hamilton against the Steelers and the Eagles, that could get ugly pretty quickly, right? But look, let's be honest. The Ravens weren't really stopping the Bengals with Hamilton on the field either. Like, Hamilton's a big fix for a lot of things, but he can't play as much as he can play all over the field. He can't play everywhere, right? So, hey, man, it's a win. The Ravens won the game. They're 7-3. They could easily right now be, 4-5? No, 5-5. They could easily be 5-5 and be 0-3 in the division. But instead, they're 7-3 and 2-1 in the division, and that will help them. I can't even tell you how many worlds that helps them moving into the postseason race as we are, getting ready. But hey, this is unfortunately the second straight year that Kyle Hamilton has gotten injured in a primetime game. Obviously, the first one being the MCL last season, and the second one being this one. So again, the Ravens have a mini bye. He got 10 days to heal up now before that big Pittsburgh game. Hopefully he'll be good to go. But yeah, man, I've been all over the place. I'm sure everybody watching this is all over the place, and we have a lot more to dive into because we have a lot of defensive stuff to talk about. Let's just round out the offense first here, though. Derrick Henry didn't do much of anything in this game. I thought Cincinnati actually did a very good job stopping him. 4.3 yards per carry for Derrick Henry on the day, 16 for 68 and a touchdown. Lamar 7 for 33. Hey, I'll give credit to Cincy's defense. They did their job when it came to stopping the Ravens' run game for the most part. I mean, Lamar really, he only really got going on that one play where he almost got in the end zone on that crazy runaround game. Hey, man, let's give a shout out to Tylan Wallace, though. I'm giving claps all around to Tylan Wallace right now. 3 for 115. And again, when I talk about Cincinnati also couldn't get out of their own way, just atrocious tackling. Tylan Wallace goes 84 yards to the house, tiptoes down that sideline. That's effort versus no effort, right? Bengals were trying to shove him out of bounds. I thought the play was over, not running to the ball. Tylan Wallace made him pay. And I feel so happy for Tylan Wallace. He's had a couple of really big moments over the course of his career. Doesn't have a ton of moments, but his moments are really, really loud when they happen. And in a good way. That's a good thing. I think Tylan has been, when called upon, a really great piece for them. And hey, this might be a hot take. I'd rather see him over Deontay Johnson. Rough go of it for Deontay. Got tackled right before the end of the half inbounds, wasn't able to get out, and then obviously fell down on a throw by Lamar that probably would have been a first down. So did have a 6-yard catch in this one. Mark Andrews, 6 for 68 in a score. Let's revisit quickly. Mark Andrews back, right? We were talking about Mark Andrews and Justin Tucker. Those guys looked a little iffy early in the season. Mark Andrews all the way back. Justin Tucker, we'll have to talk about that one a little later because I don't feel great about that. But we'll revisit that in a couple of minutes. Bateman, a couple of big catches. Did have that one drop, but a couple of big catches. 6 for 54 and a touchdown for Rashad. Zay, 4 for 34. The Bengals did a good job of containing him. Zay made a couple guys miss, but I thought the game plan for Cincy was really anyone but Zay, and the Ravens took advantage of that. Inconsistent day for the offense, but at the end of the day, Lamar ends up going crazy. I believe that is now 6 straight games of Lamar Jackson going over 275 yards. Just unreal stuff. He had a rating of 141 in this game. He was doing everything for this team.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. And that winning $5 bet could be on an early Week 11 line in the NFL. There's a theory that teams get a bump from firing a coach, but what happens when they fire a coach and trade one of their best players? FanDuel is kind of buying the fired coach hype, as it feels like the New Orleans Saints aren't as much of an underdog as you might expect to the Atlanta Falcons. The game is in New Orleans, but the FanDuel has the Falcons favored by 3.5 points. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
It's hard to think of anything more frustrating than watching Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase do what they did and lose.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast.
And James, Joe Burrow, 428, 4 touchdowns. Jamar Chase, 264, 3 of those touchdowns. a scorching performance from those guys on a day when, boy, it felt like no one else showed up.
Yeah, it was the Joe and Jamar show. They put the team on their back, and it wasn't enough. I mean, there's so many things to dive into and to discuss. The way this team came out and they take the lead early, and then they come out in the third quarter and really seize the momentum, and then everything after that, where it felt like the Ravens were just going to run away with the game, scoring 21 straight. And Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase said, "You're not. That's not what's going to happen. We're too good. We're too talented." And they damn near won the game. And you come up a play short, a decision short, an error short, and you weave in there an MVP in Lamar Jackson, the worst tackling in NFL history on an 84-yard touchdown that I'm sure we'll get to. Like there was a mixture of errors, lack of playmaking, and then there was Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. And that's how good they are. Is it got to 35-34, and the Bengals decide to go for two there. I think that's a huge storyline. So let's kind of start there. What did you think about that when Joe Burrow somehow finds Jamar Chase? Jamar Chase gets open again after going for, I think he was at 259 at that time, with a 67-yard touchdown and a 70-yard touchdown in the second half. And Joe finds Jamar for a touchdown that made it 35-34 with 37 seconds left in the fourth quarter.
That was Jamar's 10th touchdown of the year, correct? 10 touchdowns through 10 games. That's pretty good. Incredible throw. And that's beating the coverage that he nearly threw the pick on earlier, or a very similar coverage where he's essentially got 3 defenders over 2 receivers and they're trying to high-low, but then there's 2 defenders that he ends up high-lowing, and then they both go high, and then he throws it over them anyway. I mean, it's as perfect as a throw can be, and Jamar Chase running that route well enough to get behind those 2 guys. I mean, that play is perfection. The play that follows it is very frustrating that they don't convert the 2-point conversion. Maybe it's even frustrating that they take the timeout, but the decision to go for 2 at the time I supported, and I think I still support. And here's my rationale. There's 38 seconds left or something in
37.
the game.
Yep.
And you're kicking the ball back to the Ravens either way. You're either kicking the ball back to the Ravens with a 1-point lead or a 1-point deficit, as they did, or you're kicking the ball back to the Ravens in a tie game. Either with a 1-point lead or in a tie game. The Ravens with 2 timeouts. Is that right at that point?
That is right. They had 2.
Okay, so 2 timeouts left for the Ravens, who just need to get to Justin Tucker range to win the game either way in regulation. The only reason you don't go for 2 there, because at that point, do you have any confidence in the defense to get a stop in overtime if you need to? You've given up 4 straight touchdowns after Chase Brown's fumble.
Yep.
I don't. So you give yourself a chance to win in regulation if you make the 2-point conversion. You give yourself a chance that Baltimore doesn't have enough time to get into field goal range, which maybe they do either way. But that chance is just as present, even in a tie game, if they kick the extra point. And this is why I landed on still being in support of the decision to go for 2, even if the outcome isn't what we wanted there, because even in a tie game, the Ravens have a chance to go win it in regulation. The only argument that you can make is that maybe the Ravens are a little bit less aggressive in a tie game, knowing that they have overtime to fall back on. But I just don't buy it. I think the Ravens are trying their hardest to win in regulation, regardless of that play. So I think that's why I land on it being totally fine and where I was initially on trying to win the game in regulation with your best players, which are Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Unfortunately, the play didn't go to Jamar there, but yeah, I think I end up fine with it.
I'm more than fine with it. In fact, it would have been the opposite. Had Zach kicked the extra point to tie it, I would have been extremely critical.
Yeah.
The same way I would have been critical, or was critical, of Tampa Bay against Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened on Monday night. And it's pretty similar. I think the difference in really, because there's a lot of people that say kick it. And so now they're rolling their eyes at us because we agree. To me, when did you feel more comfortable? When Lamar Jackson had the ball and he was laughing after throwing an incompletion to get to 3rd down at the 5-yard line. The clock stops and he's just giggling like he's playing flag football and has no worry in the world about picking it up on 3rd down, picking up the touchdown. And he did, by the way, the jump shot to Rashad Bateman.
And it looks like child's play.
It does. It does. And so what was more uncomfortable or scarier, Lamar or were you more comfortable with the defense on the field or the offense? I was more comfortable with the offense and Joe Burrow. Even on 4th and 10, I was like, I don't think he's just going to throw 4 straight incompletions. Like, I think he's going to complete something here. Will it be enough to get to the sticks? And he got it right to the sticks with Yosavash. But yeah, like, trust Joe, trust what you have, and go for it. I totally get it. Go for 2, get it, and then your defense can be aggressive and be like, all right, we got to get a stop here, and we win the game. And it is that simple. It doesn't mean send everyone on an all-out blitz. That's not what I mean. But be aggressive as in you're 3 plays away from ending the game, 4 plays away from ending the game. You don't know that if it's tied. And so I have no issues with going for it. I have issues with how the play went down because Mike Gesicki is just tackled, basically. I mean, grabbed by at least 2 guys. And Joe Burrow, I mean, I think his helmet's still being grabbed right now at M&T Bank Stadium. I'm not sure the Bengals escaped Baltimore with it, with the way that went. And I hate that game with Lamar being awesome, scoring on 4 straight touchdowns and just looking like the MVP, rallying his team back from a 21-7 deficit. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase responding multiple times and saying, no, we are not going to lose our chances of winning the AFC North tonight. And it come down to that final play, and it partially get decided by the officials. It's not the only reason, of course. There's a bunch of other stuff we'll get to, but it was a reason. And I hate that because it should have been a clean final play to determine the outcome.
Yeah, the penalty slant was against Baltimore, but Baltimore is like the least disciplined team in the NFL, and the Bengals are one of the most disciplined teams in the NFL. So you should have expected that from a flag-happy crew, and for whatever reason, they decided to swallow flags and whistles, I guess more whistles and flags on that final drive where Joe Burrow's hitting the head twice. Neither is called. Gesicki is clearly held. He flops a little bit, which maybe is why the officials don't throw the flag. I don't know. Maybe they saw the flop and not the initial hold. I don't know how you miss it. It's very blatant. I think
he was doing that because he had been held before and he wasn't getting him. And he's like, all right, fine. Then I'm just going to do it. Like, show that I'm being held. You know?
It's just another argument in favor of a video assistant for stuff like that, where like, I do worry about it in the NFL because there's that whole adage that you could call holding on every play. But for stuff like that, like, it clearly impacts the play. That's part of the primary read of the play. It's a high-low with Gesicki and Chase over there, and Burrow comes off it and goes to the other side with Tanner Hudson. Or maybe it's not even the best decision. Maybe he can hang in there and throw it to Jamar Chase. But man, did they have issues with pressure in this game as well. And so when we talk about, there were some blown calls there, and that is a problem, and I don't mean to minimize it because I think that it's blatant. Terry McCauley, who is an official consultant for the Thursday night broadcast, agreed. There's plenty of other things that we could talk about that the Bengals had control over in this game that went wrong, from Chase Brown's fumble to protection issues to the defense wilting in the second half, the offense not taking advantage of when the defense was actually standing up and getting 5 of 6 drives for the Ravens to start this game to end in punts, 4 3-and-outs, 5 3-and-outs, 4 3-and-outs. I mean,
4 3-and-outs, 5 punts. Yeah.
5 punts, 4 3-and-outs.
On the first 6 possessions.
Yeah. Not counting the one that ended the half.
San Francisco 49ers coming off a bye, well-rested, getting players back, reinforcements.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast.
All right, Croc, well-rested here. We didn't have a game last week. We didn't have a keys to victory. We're going live here post Thursday Night Football on YouTube. First thing in your feeds for the audio listeners on your way to work on Friday morning to get ready, set the weekend off right, and get ready for some more 49ers football here in week 10 and everything good news. Like,
is it Christmas for you? Because you drafted a certain player, number 1 overall in the fantasy league, and you missed the guy for the first 2 months of the season, and you had no idea if he was even going to return, and we're hearing he's going to Germany and all these other things, but you got a nice little toy, a nice little shot in the arm to revamp your fantasy football team for the rest of this little regular season.
Look, I'm in the same place the 49ers are right now, and I blame Kyle Shanahan for both the 49ers record and my fantasy record because a little heads up, my guy, that Christian McCaffrey wasn't going to play at all before you draft him 1.1 in your fantasy league. And not only Christian McCaffrey, I'm going to activate my other guy who's been stashed all year on IR. I've been scraping by with Austin Eckler's and Tank Bigsby's at running back. Jonathan Brooks as well gets activated. So double activations from my fantasy league, Oblong Balls commish, Nick Winkler. You guys, if you know, you listen to the Winky Wednesday. He's our commish there. And I don't play I used to write about fantasy football and get paid for it. I play so little fantasy football now. I have very few leagues, and those leagues matter. To be honest with you, the most fun for me nowadays with fantasy football is getting together with old buddies in person and drafting. That's what it's all about. And then everything else that happens the rest of the season is gravy. But hey, better late than never. Christian McCaffrey activated on my team. He hasn't officially been activated, but I already put him in the running back slot. He's in there. He's RB1 for me now. Hasn't officially been activated by the San Francisco 49ers, but everyone from Richard Sherman to Christian McCaffrey himself to Kyle Shanahan, it sounds like he's going to be good to go. And Christian McCaffrey even said that he could have gone in the last game, and now is at an extra 2 weeks on top of that with the bye to get ready to go against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Christian McCaffrey limited again in practice, but it looks like he's had some rigorous weeks as the reports are, and no setbacks with the Achilles tendonitis. Christian McCaffrey primed to make his debut, not only for my fantasy football team, but for the San Francisco 49ers in Week 10 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Key to victory, number one, be healthy, be full power, right? Juwan Jennings, Jake Moody kicking field goals, looks like for the San Francisco 49ers. John Feliciano coming back for the San Francisco 49ers crowd. Chris Foerster, the 49ers offensive line coach, said that he's not going to jump into the starting lineup either. He's a backup player for the 49ers. So that's what his status is right now. Niners getting healthy. And in fact, Christian McCaffrey, Croc, might be more healthy in Week 10 than Jordan Mason, because Jordan Mason had the blue jersey on Thursday at practice for the 49ers. So he's got that.
And that's the non-contact uniform for those of you who don't know.
Non-contact, not able to touch him. I don't think they wanted defenders to touch Christian McCaffrey either. He's been kind of limited. But so Christian McCaffrey's back. That's the big story of the week for the 49ers.
That is the big story. And I started this off talking about how, your fantasy team got a nice little shot in the arm, adrenaline, get some things going. But I think the 49ers as well got the same thing. This is much needed. This is a team that I'd say if you ask most of the fan base, they weren't expecting the 49ers to be 4-4, at the bye week. And now you have an opportunity to, okay, we're 4-4, but you're in striking range in the NFC West. Luckily, nobody's run away from this division, especially with the Seattle Seahawks starting off 3-0. And I think they're in last place right now. But you're in prime position to be like, all right, we got some guys coming back, feeling a little healthier. Christian McCaffrey is going to help us in certain areas, help us in the red zone, help us potentially in the drive efficiency, yards per drive efficiency, yards per play efficiency. And I would say even with Brock Purdy, not the most efficient version of Brock Purdy that we've seen. And I think maybe Christian McCaffrey is a big part of that. So having your safety blanket, having your outlet, and hopefully, again, somebody that's going to help the 49ers in the red zone, this is huge for the 49ers.
Red zone offense is the big one for me. And how much of a difference does Christian McCaffrey make to the red zone offense? Because we've pointed to Christian McCaffrey as potentially one of the reasons. But the 49ers red zone offense has been a little weird, and it's been worse statistically than even pre-Christian McCaffrey. Is Christian McCaffrey enough to just fix all the ills on the San Francisco 49ers? Because vibes are good and players are pumped to have him back. And he's clearly a really good player and is a dynamic player. He's going to help in a lot of ways, run and pass. But is he just like the Band-Aid for everything?
Man, he helps a lot. And the biggest thing is how much better is he than the guys that are replacing him? And what does that look like? And we've seen guys get yards, right? Grendel, he's run for a good amount of yards in games. We've seen Jordan Mason. And Jordan Mason, he did a terrific job in the replacement of Christian McCaffrey. But I think there's it's situational football where a guy like Christian McCaffrey helps you more so than anything else. So I think that's the place right there where you talk about putting a Band-Aid on things. But I think they kind of got surgery a little bit, healed up, and now you have a guy that's going to really inject a little bit more into the offense.
I mean, Jordan Mason's still the 4th leading rusher in the NFL right now. So, like, yards per carry is not the thing that really is a problem currently, or is going to be the thing that Christian McCaffrey fixed. And yards per carry might not change a lot with Christian McCaffrey. But
I think that's like situational though, right? Like
Yeah.
I think of a quarterback who throws for a lot of yards, but then when you look at when he's throwing for these yards, it's garbage time, or in games when they're just behind and they don't have a chance to win the ball game, right? You see that a lot sometimes with quarterbacks. So Jordan Mason, a bunch of yards, but if it's not in games that's going to help you win more, right? Like you would hope for, okay, we got 4th leading rusher in the NFL. Give me a little bit of what Baltimore has, which tonight, I don't know if you guys watched the game, it was a shootout, amazing performances from both Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. But, you know, Derrick Henry, if he's going to be the league leading rusher, like let me have that record where I know that you're leading and it's not empty yardage that you're getting. And I'm not saying that with Jordan Mason, but it has felt like the bulk of him having the big games is like, okay, yeah, good, you won. But in other games where you're running well, but man, we lost a few of these ball games.
Yeah, and we talked about this with some of the breakaway runs and plays, and the 49ers only have 2 20-plus yard touchdowns this season. Last year, all season long, they're well behind the pace. They had 15 last year. And so, you know, they're well behind even the half a season pace for long touchdown runs. And so finishing the job, getting into the end zone, finishing big plays. Christian McCaffrey's so good in small areas too. So, and I see it touched on in the chat here as well. The gravity, the attention that Christian McCaffrey brings for defensive coordinators and what you're able to do. Kyle Shanahan loves having those players that can do everything. Christian McCaffrey, and it's why he loves Kyle Juszczyk. And you have to play the 49ers a certain way when they have these guys on the field. And then Kyle Shanahan knows that, so then he can turn 21 personnel into 11 personnel really quick, right? And then he can go the other way as well. And all of a sudden, Deebo Samuel's back there. And so you have 2 guys that can be running backs and wide receivers, and you got another guy who can be a tight end or a fullback or a running back, and he can catch the ball out of the backfield, and George Kittle can pancake you, and he can make plays as well. So it really just adds an element, and it does add a little bit everywhere to have Christian McCaffrey back. And yeah, you might not see it in the yards per carry, but I think you see it in the margins. And that's where Christian McCaffrey is going to help, and it's going to help a little bit everywhere. That's the way I look at it with Christian McCaffrey. And it's why he's one of the running. And remember, Croc, I'm the West Coast chairman of Running Backs Don't Matter. You see guys like Christian McCaffrey. We've seen it this year from Saquon Barkley, who was a free agent. Anybody could have signed him. He ends up in Philadelphia. Derrick Henry, anybody could have signed him. He ended up in Baltimore. And you see these guys, you're like, yeah, there's a few guys that do make a difference. And Christian McCaffrey's one of those guys.
I got a DM on Instagram about you not liking running backs, and they said, forget what Peacock says, we need to draft Gentry. So, or Genty, the running back from Boise State.
Oh, look, if he's there, I'm not going to put it past Kyle Shanahan to draft another running back and spend more resources on running back. It's more about the resources spent than like you want to have good running backs. That's not it. It's more about the resources. But like, look, the guy that was not drafted by any team, all 32 teams, including the 49ers, is still 4th in the league in rushing right now in Jordan Mason. But yeah, Christian McCaffrey's better. Welcome back, Christian McCaffrey. If he does indeed play, we're acting like he's going to play. He hasn't officially been activated, but all signs pointing to Christian McCaffrey coming back.
Guys, ever feel like you need a little boost in the bedroom? It's time to stop worrying about your performance and get Hims so you can feel confident knowing you can get hard and stay hard whenever you're in the mood. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hormones and Viagra and Cialis, and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. HIMS.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Prices vary based on products and subscription plans.
The Florida Gators, and more appropriately, Scott Strickland, Florida Gators athletic director, have announced that Billy Napier will return as the Florida Gators head coach.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators.
The Florida Gators have announced that Billy Napier is coming back. And before I even give an opinion on it, you're welcome to give an opinion on it. I know where I stand, but we'll talk about that in a second. I understand why they put out a statement. And by that I mean I know why Scott Strickland and the Florida Gators felt the need to put out a statement of, hey, we're bringing back Billy Napier to be the head coach of the Florida Gators once again in 2025. Because your recruiting class is terrible right now, right? And a big part of your recruiting class being terrible is, well, simply put, everyone thinks you're going to get fired, right? In fact, I'll put it in the chat now. Should the Florida Gators have brought Billy Napier back? And there we go. We've got the yes or no in there. But yeah, this is just brutal, ugly. And yeah, the Florida Gators are bringing back Billy Napier because your recruiting class is so bad. You had to put out the announcement that, hey, he's coming back. Because then, also think about it, you are less than a month away from early signing day or the early signing period. You put out this announcement and it's like, okay, well, Georgia, Florida State, Miami, Alabama, anybody else that you're recruiting against will not be able to come out and say, yeah, but Billy's not going to be there next year. Here's the thing. Florida's not going to end this year well. Or at least I don't think so. I think they win one more game. Florida State, depending on DJ Lagway and his status, I fully expect him to be out this week. But I feel like you just kick the can down the road, right? Because next summer, you're not going to have a good recruiting class. Right? I think we can all kind of chalk that one already. Next summer, you're not going to have a good recruiting class for the 2026 class. Okay? Because next summer is going to be the same thing as this summer, where it's like, well, he's on the hot seat because, and we spoke about this, a couple weeks ago, and since then we've also spoken about it, but if Billy Napier comes back for 2025, then the 2026 recruiting class is going to know that, hey, he made it through by the skin of his teeth, which means that next year he might not be here, as in meaning 2026, which means why would I commit to that? Okay, so that's why Scott Strickland had to put out the statement about whether or not they were keeping Billy, because then you knock out the question mark of whether or not he will be here. That does not make it a good decision. Just want to make that one clear. And I will also say this, that I first off, I think you should have announced it weeks ago if you were doing this. But I do think that this wasn't, oh, we were always committed to him. I don't like that people are doing that. I think that this is truly the embarrassment of Florida, because I think it is them saying keeping games close and playing hard is good enough at the University of Florida in 2024. And that's embarrassing. If you ask me, at least, I feel like that's simply not how it should be. But even Scott Strickland was like, oh, you can tell by the way these guys are playing. What the hell does that mean? I get they're playing tough. You don't win national championships for playing tough and losing games. You win national championships for winning games. And that's the goal, right? I said going into the season, I thought that this was a team that, would, win 7 games with good coaching, but they don't have that. So I said 5 or 6 going out the whole summer. That was my point. That statement's about as important as the signature I put on the Columbia House subscription in the 90s. Don't know which statement you are referring to. But I will again say, yeah, I think that Scott Strickland felt the need to put out that statement because, which I'm assuming that's the statement that you were talking about, the entire statement, not a specific line. But that's why he had to put out that statement, just because it allows you to qualm that. And yes, you can say that it's not important at all. Sure. But as long as Billy Napier can say, hey, look at this, like we're good here. I do think they're going to keep Billy Napier for another year. I don't think it's for anything other than they're fine with mediocrity. And let's call it what it is. Right now, so far, Florida has been a mediocre team under Billy Napier. And I don't think that they care about that. Because this isn't the first time Scott Strickland has committed to mediocrity. Because don't forget, Mike White was bad at Florida, and Scott Strickland gave him a contract extension and then fired him the next year or the same season. But Scott Strickland had given him a contract extension before. Because don't forget, they extended Mike White and Dan Mullen and then fired them both. So that's where we were at with that. It's tough. I will also say this. I hate the idea of keeping Billy Napier for another year for the same thing that I've been saying. Last year, people were calling for him to be fired when the recruiting class fell apart. And I said, you have to give him at least year 3. Hopefully, if he tanks, then the UAA gets canned, which they're not going to do because, again, like I've been saying, upper administration at the University of Florida, spineless cowards, spineless losers, whatever you want to use. So that's where I stand on them. But, I mean, it's just it pisses me off. But I was always saying year 3 because he either turns it around or he doesn't, and that's when you get to fire him. Because for me, I think year 3 is a good time to know that a coach cannot win you a national championship. I think if they answer that question, which I think that Billy Napier answered the question of no, I cannot win you a national championship, then I think it's time to cut bait. If they give you at least a little bit of pause, if you go, hey, can he win you a national championship? And your answer is maybe, then I think it's a bit different. Then I think you give him another year. But I think Billy Napier has proven that no, he will not be the head coach to win a national championship at the University of Florida. I will also say that there are far too many fans right now victory lapping that he's coming back. If I told you he's coming back, he's our coach, he's this, he's that. Just because they're bringing him back, it does not mean that those of us who want him fired are wrong. It means that 1, we have higher expectations for the University of Florida, and 2, that the University of Florida may have made a bad decision. If he ends up working out, then sure, gloat all you want. But if he gets fired next year, need you guys to admit that you're the clowns that were wrong. He's 15-18. He's 4-4, and he's probably going to finish 5-7 again. Brutal.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. And that winning $5 bet could be on an early Week 11 line in the NFL. There's a theory that teams get a bump from firing a coach, but what happens when they fire a coach and trade one of their best players? FanDuel is kind of buying the fired coach hype, as it feels like the New Orleans Saints aren't as much of an underdog as you might expect to the Atlanta Falcons. The game is in New Orleans, but the FanDuel has the Falcons favored by 3.5 points. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
The latest on Tyrese Maxey. And
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast.
the news nobody wanted to hear comes out today. The latest on Tyrese Maxey. The 76ers last night falling to the Clippers in a very rough second half, and they're tied for the worst in the NBA. We cannot have anything nice here in Philadelphia. That is what it is coming out to be. So Tyrese Maxey, last night, he goes out early in the game, does not come back to return due to the hamstring. Keith, we just got updates on what this means for him and for the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's one of those things they're going to do further evaluation. But typically when you do further evaluation, that typically confirms what you already have, right? So you're getting a second opinion. But the expectation is that he's going to miss a couple weeks. And the thing is, they're saying he has hamstring tightness, but typically that's a hamstring strain. The thing is, it's one of those things where, Maxey played the entire third quarter. He shot the ball 0 for 3, 0 for 2 on 3-pointers. But it's one of those things where, you look at it and, you feel the tightness, you feel the soreness, whatever it is, and then you just shut them down. But in regards, what does it mean for the 76ers? It's a tough spot. I mean, we're looking at it, a guy who, has been providing much of the offense. You're looking at it where now you're saying you have Paul George, who probably going to be he is going to be the only all-star, so to speak, playing for the Sixers tomorrow against the Lakers. And then you don't have Joel Embiid coming back until Tuesday. So you're going to have Maxey out. So they never had a full team. They just never had a full team. And it just, when we thought they were getting ready to, they're not. And these are one of those injuries that you can't rush a player back. You have to basically take your time, go through things, make sure he's 100%, because as we found out last year with Nico Batum, you come back too early, the next thing you know, you're going to be on the shelf a couple more weeks.
My takeaway right now is that the Philadelphia 76ers are in trouble, and I know that people might say that's an overreaction, but the injury bug is clearly hitting this locker room in Philadelphia. And as you alluded to, just as you thought this team was going to get back fully healthy with everybody, now Tyrese Maxey is out for some time. And this was my biggest worry with him coming in and not having Paul George and Joel Embiid, the amount of minutes, the pressure on him, what he's going to have to play. If he gets injured, it's going to be a real problem. And now you're looking at that real problem. So now you're saying, okay, well, Paul George just came back from injury. He's trying to get better and better with the chemistry of the team. That chemistry now completely is going to be different in this next game without Tyrese Maxey. Not only that, you're asking Paul George to now be that guy to play a ton of minutes and being able to develop that offensive game plan, because you don't have Tyrese Maxey now and you still don't have Joel Embiid for at least 2 more games. So this is trouble to me right now, and you don't want to rush Tyrese Maxey back, and I hope that he is okay. But you look at the Philadelphia 76ers and you say, what else could go wrong? And we always have said Tyrese Maxey cannot go down. It's happening now. It's still early in the season, and I understand that there's time to develop from this and be able to get a better record. But it just has been such a rough start for this team, and this on top of it, oh boy, this is just not a fun time right now for anybody watching this team. It's going to be tough. And I think Paul George, having that much pressure on him and having to play that many minutes, that's going to be tough on a guy that's a veteran coming into this league, not necessarily in his prime of prime anymore. You don't want PG to get more injured too.
Yeah, I mean, I think PG will be fine. No, it is what it is. Like, the 76ers have to realize that it's a lot of expectations, and this might not be it. Like, this might not be the year, at least for the early goings, right? So, because the thing about PG, he's a type of guy, he's a veteran dude, and he realized, like, hey, I'm not coming back until I'm ready,
right,
until I'm 100% ready. And then he came back. But yeah, he's going to have to carry the load. Paul George came here thinking he was going to be a third option or whatever. But right now, he's about to be the point forward. He's going to be the face of the team tomorrow and then also on Sunday. So, it's one of those things where it's just a doom and gloom right now for the Sixers.
It's a really tough situation. That's the best way to put it. And yesterday I was all positive saying, the Sixers are going to beat the Clippers. That clearly did not happen. We'll break that down in a little bit. But now this comes out and it's like, oh boy, here we go again. Consistently, the injuries happening in Philadelphia. So Nick Nurse is clearly going to have to continue to go after these rotations, figure out what works. And I'm going to see who is going to step up in terms of what we want to look at. So right now, Do you start Kyle Lowry? Do you start a guy that's also a veteran that's not in his prime? Is that who you're looking at to start? Does Jared McCain get more minutes off the bench, but then there's more pressure coming towards him and he might get exposed defensively? You're looking at a really interesting turn of events. And then we've also touched on the Sixers do have a back-to-back coming up when Joel Embiid does come back. If Paul George and Joel don't play, this team has no chance of winning at all without Tyrese Maxey being on the court. So there's a lot of things.
This team has no chance of winning a lot of games right about now. I mean,
It's
I'm
bad.
just going to be
It's
real
bad.
with you. You know, even if Paul George and Tyrese Maxey played, it would be a major upset for them to beat the Knicks.
Guys, ever feel like you need a little boost in the bedroom? It's time to stop worrying about your performance and get Hims so you can feel confident knowing you can get hard and stay hard whenever you're in the mood. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis, and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Prices vary based on products and subscription plans.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast.
So I'm not trying to say, it's kind of final word on this rotation, hypothetical rotation changes, like what can you do? I think ultimately a couple things need to happen. They need a baseline of production from the bench, like something that is just like, okay, it's not good. You're not going to want to compare it to 75% of the benches around the league where you get better scoring this over, but like you can put people out there. They will take shots. They will occasionally make a shot. Gabe Vincent goes from being a real negative offensively, the amount when he is shooting a lot, they're not going in, to normal, not great, or neutral or something. Max Christie gets somewhere closer to the guy that people were hoping, including the Lakers, especially the Lakers, we're hoping he'd be this season. You get something closer to that needs to happen. And then to make it so you are not quite as focused on maybe some of the shortcomings, a guy like D'Lo, who when you what is he shooting, like 30-something% right now, like that is not tolerable for a team like this from a player of his caliber. Reeves, everybody's got to be better, but like there are certain things, we'd be better if he was turning the ball over a little bit more than he has been, but he was shooting 44% from 3-point range. I'd make that trade. They can't afford that specifically from him because of his role in the offense. So, I would give what they've got a little bit more time because I don't trust the people that would end up in the starting lineup. I don't think that'll help. And maybe you jimmy around with when people are coming in and out of games. That's probably how I would do it. But a lot of things need to improve in both the bench and the.
Yeah, I'm not even lobbying for a change. I'm just saying the idea that it would happen is not out of the question because things as currently constructed are not working.
Yeah, I would agree. So you were down in El Segundo on Thursday talking to the G Leaguers. It's their second day of practice or training camp or whatever it is. And relevant in part because Bronny, the Lakers announced talked about the training plan. He was sent down to the G League South Bay Lakers and is going to be playing home games with them and then presumably traveling with the team. So kind of an interesting way that they're doing it for now.
Yeah. For now should be stressed. We'll see how it goes moving forward, but Bronny's G League season will begin Saturday when the South Bay Lakers have their first game. I was down in El Segundo for this because I had a sit down with Zach Guthrie, the new South Bay Lakers coach. It's going to be on Lakers Talk this coming Tuesday, 7:10. I found him a very bright guy. He is very excited at this opportunity to be coaching the team at a time when they are really leaning into development. He also, too, coached J.J. Redick as an assistant for half a season in Orlando and half a season in Dallas. So he had a bit of a rapport with J.J. heading into this. There are a few items that I wanted to get to in terms of most of the players are made available, and I asked some questions, but just because we could all use a little positivity with the Lakers right now, this clip of Quincy Oliveri, when I asked him just what it's been like for him right now, in particular with the world kind of just smiling for him.
There have been a lot of people over the last few weeks who've really enjoyed this moment for you. It's been covered on ESPN, things like
crazy.
That. What's that been like for you, just to see people enjoy this for you?
It's crazy. There's a lot of people that have been reaching out just saying that I'm like real genuine, and I don't even know how to respond to that because I just feel like I'm being myself, but my dad talk about it. My grandma actually just texted me last night when I showed her my new necklace. I have my family's name across my neck on my new gold chain, and she said, "What's my celebrity relative doing?" I'm like, "Nah, Mama, I'm just playing a video game like what I always do." So it's honestly surreal because I'm still the same person without the media coverage. It just happens to be that I gained like 60,000 followers and I have all this attention now, but it's honestly, it's insane.
People seem happy for you.
Yeah, they are, and I appreciate that, but that doesn't define who I am as a person because at the end of the day, I still have to handle my business. It's not like the Lakers are listening to the media, the coaches aren't listening to the media. It's all about what do I do every day to put myself into a position to succeed.
He also, both before the media scrum started and then after it ended, went up to all of us, shook our hands. Like, I'm telling you, this kid is so easy to root for and so likable. It's funny too, like somebody made a joke, like, you know, in talking with us, "Oh, you're just looking to steal our jobs later." And he's like, "I am." And it turns out, like, I guess his dad growing up was in media, and like did a similar type job or was involved in media. He didn't specify what, but like he is really easy to root for. And you can just see how much this opportunity means to him. And, you know, when I talked to Zach Guthrie about Oliveri, like everyone who talks about him, just said, hell of a person. And you just like being around him.
I'm really looking forward to when we get to see him at the Crypt in those couple times a year that the Memphis Grizzlies visit. So we can really see how he's developed. Because that seems to be where all two-way players.
Easy.
I feel like if he were like a true point guard, Bronny would probably not be traveling. Like,
I don't know.
I think if the need was there, they'd find a way. You know, he's probably somebody they feel as confident in to do stuff. The need's just not there, at least not yet.
Speaking of point guards, though, I asked Jalen Hood-Schifino. Everybody knows his third-year option was not picked up by the team, which is, you know, it might start becoming a little less uncommon. You pointed this out to me, Brian. We were talking offline. Just
in apron world, where the punitive taxes and all these other things for players that I think, you know, it used to be just sort of, all right, well, of course you'd pick up a $4 million option for your first round pick from 2 years ago, but now, and there were, I think we were 6 players from that class that did not have their contracts picked up, or the options in their contracts picked up.
But like, you know, he talked before about before I asked him this question, you know, he talked about like he's really realizing the importance of he needs to be more vocal, period. He needs to be more of a vocal leader. It's not just enough to try to lead by example or just work hard. Like as a point guard, that's what you're supposed to do. Like he is aware that he has been written off in perception. And I asked him, just like as a professional, very young in your career, what is it like for you to have this type of uncertainty, you know, with a third-year option not getting picked up? And he said, quote, "I mean, it happened. So for me, I just got to continue to get better. There's still an opportunity to get better, to learn playing at the G League, big team or what, big team or not, just opportunities will be there. So at the end of the day, for me, I just got to continue to take it day by day and take advantage of anything that comes my way. And I also asked him, like, where do you think you are in your development, given that you're young, you're learning a very hard position, and you've missed a lot of time? And he said, and this was this thing that really jumped out at me. He said, quote, "It's easy for me to try to beat myself up and how I've been playing. So I just staying positive, continue to put God first, and everything will align and work out where it's supposed to be." And he's like, you know, I'm 21, I've had multiple surgeries. Like this is difficult. And I really feel for him hearing him talk about this. Like this has to be extremely difficult for JHS.
Yeah, I mean, we spend a lot of time, you know, as basketball fans, like you just said, you know, this guy sucks. This guy, he's a bust. He's, you know, and I mean, to some degree, it comes with the gig. Like this is, you know, what they sign up, but like, especially with younger players, and you know, we've never been the types of hosts, writers, podcasters, radio people who like really root against individual players, like, you know, root for people to fail. It's just, I don't like doing that. I think it's karmically bad idea. It's none of it is good. But particularly with young players, like you forget, like this is what Jalen Hood-Schifino has been trying to work towards probably since he was 10, you know, if maybe younger. And to get there, which is an enormous accomplishment, and instantly have it go as wrong as it has. And this, it's hard to picture a first couple of years of a player's career going as poorly as this one has. And it's like he's a young guy, and he's just, you know, when you hear somebody say it's like really easy for me to beat myself up, it makes me think like this is probably part of the reason the Lakers aren't having him travel. It's like, just go play. We need you to go play. We don't need you sitting on a bench as an emergency point guard is not going to do us any good. It's not going to do you any good. You need to go play. And I think to some degree too, like we kind of need you to rehab your appeal.
Yeah.
Oh, like if you go down there and play well, now you probably aren't going to cost, you know, the $4 million from next year if somebody wants to sign you, re-sign you, if we trade you, whatever it might be. Like go rehab go play, and you know, we'll see what happens. It's just it's a bummer. It's a real bummer for guys like that because he seems like a you know, really solid person.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys work so hard to get to this place. And even as we evaluate them, and I'm not here to say like, you know, Hood-Schifino has played great and this, whatever, but like you do have to remember that these are young people who are at the bad end of a really difficult time.
I also asked Maxwell Lewis, because we talked about before, like sort of what his lane and his position is in the NBA has been frankly difficult to ascertain. And he talked about just, he's trying to work to just simplify everything that he does, make quick decisions on the court, break the habit of, you know, kind of dribble jabbing too much with the ball, just do something quickly. But I asked him what he pictured, like his prototype in the NBA, if he could do that. And he mentioned early Mikal Bridges, and he said he's been watching a lot of film on him, I'm presuming in his Phoenix days. And he said he just keeps it simple, and he's really decisive. Now I feel later on down the line, I want to get back to what I feel like I can do, more of like a Rudy Gay, Paul George, maybe down those years. But right now I'm just trying to stick in the league and show what I can do. I mean, the other stuff is maybe getting ahead of themselves, but I like that he was very specific in the way he talked about Bridges.
We'll quit on this, but like, this is what a development program is supposed to do. It's supposed to help players identify both the skill that can get them into the NBA, but specifically can get them in the NBA in a way that'll help the Lakers. And it's not about turning all these guys into stars. It's turning them into viable NBA players. And if you can do that with players you sign on two-way contracts after the draft, there's a massive, massive win. And so the Lakers clearly have identified guys with NBA potential. Again, they're all playing in Memphis right now. they just need to do a better job of figuring out how they can actually hold on to some of these players that can have some value. That's both a talent identification thing. It's a talent identification. It's a player development thing, and then it's also a roster management thing. So you actually have room to use these guys if they do show potential.